Hi, my name is Samantha Mirabal, and I'm going to do a video just to show some of the things that you can do with fills to add some interest to your embroidery work. By no means is it all inclusive, but the point is to show you how many things are out there so that you can add some creativity and come up with your own ideas. This is just show you some pictures first and then we'll pop over, but some of the things that you have available to you within Design Shop is you can create your own decorative patterns, and once you have a decorative pattern you can take your fill, change the stitch type to decorative, and then select your own custom pattern. So this is one that I did. You can add split lines, which will add needle penetrations along whatever line you draw, and that will add some definition within your fill area. You can use a larger density and then add a single underlay at a different angle underneath to create a global underlay under a large design, or you can use this for that effect people use on towels to hold down the mat where then you put text on top of it. You can also do fill islands, which is a built-in feature of the tool. On your fills, you can add curved stitch direction lines instead of straight lines. There's a whole tab under the object properties for distortion effect or for effects, and at the bottom of that one you can do distortion effects where you can do radial out, radial in, and there's several different options, and you can use that to help twist the stitches around within your fill to make it look more 3D. This is just another example of, up here I did a decorative fill. Well, you can also create your own patterns. All I did was a font, created a $sign, and then created a custom pattern off of it and applied that to a fill. So it's very simple to do. You can use the built-in pattern fills and add a custom stitch direction along here so that instead of just being a straight basket weave sort of design, you can actually give it some shape to it by adding a curved stitch direction line. And these are just more examples. There are built-in shapes that you can use to quickly create different shapes of sorts. You can add a randomized edge, so if you're doing trees or firs, or you're trying to get a more realistic look, doing a comet, you can randomize one side of the element or both sides of the element, and then you can control how random it is, really small amount of randomness or really jagged like I have here. You can create custom densities under the Effect tab, and that will allow you to stack up different fills using that and create your own blends. And then this is just an example of taking a fill area and using the curved stitch direction tool to get kind of this ended up being a ribbon, so that you can see that you can get some neat sheer effects. So let's go look at how some of these are used. So first off, this is Design Shop. I'm running Pro Plus. To create a fill, the first thing you'll want to do is use your complex fill. I'm going to use the traditional input mode, which is this first button. If you hold that down, you'll see you have lots of options. You have the traditional, which is the first one. The third one is going to be your complex fill as a unifill input mode. The difference between those is your unifill is going to let you add splices as you go, and then you can of course create vectors over here. So when using this, notice down here you also have these automatic input modes. So if you want to create a perfect circle, this is a good opportunity to be able to do that. So what you would do is you'd select the traditional fill. I would then come down and click on the automatic circle. So you see both of those are highlighted. From there, I can click one point on the screen, click a second point on the screen, and now you'll see it's creating an oval. Well, if I hold my Shift key down and move it, Shift locks the proportions in X and Y, so that gives me a perfect circle. So no matter where I drag my mouse, because my Shift key is held, it locks it to a circle, so I can select it, and now I have a circle. All right, so there's one thing when you're using these automatic input modes, make sure you change the stitch direction so that you're not running straight horizontal or straight vertical. You'll have better sew-outs that way. All right, so once we create a fill, now we can add some effects to it. So let's see, different things we can do. Why don't we go into the properties? So I'm going to double click on it, and over here is our effects tab. So from your effects tab, you can enable the random edge. Okay, so let me just move it that way instead. So if I enable random edge, and I'm going to change the randomness to, let's say, 15%, you see it randomizes both sides. So you can see how this would be useful if you're trying to do a fur on an animal or something like that. You really wouldn't want a hard line. If you don't want it going off both sides, you're trying to get a comet, well, you can do a comet look and even make that even more random. Okay, or if you want just a little bit, so let's say you're doing an ocean or something like that and the waves coming up, you can randomize just a little bit. Okay, so that's your random edge tool. You also have down here distortion effects, so let's do the radial out. That'll apply a circle on there, and it's a little bit difficult to see with this color, but if I zoom in, you can see it almost looks like that's a hat. Hey, look at that, I made a hat. That's cute. So now I have a radial section in there to form a hat. Okay, so or like my disc ran over a marble or something like that. It's just another effect you can use. Okay, well, let's turn that one off and look at a few others. So I'm going to say none and apply. Let's go over to the top stitching tab. Under your top stitching tab, you can work with densities. So let's say I want this to be a global underlay for a design that I'm working on. I can change this to something big. I'm just picking 20. Not sure that's the right answer, but that's what I'm picking at the moment. And then for underlays, we only need one underlay when we're going to do that. So whatever I set the density here, I would want to set the density right here. All right, 20 is too small, or for what I want to show you anyway. So I'm going to change it to 50, just so it's more open. And if I want it to come to the edge, I can set my border margin to 0. Okay, now you have trapunto or trace border. If you turn those off, what you'll notice is your stitches, the edges won't look as clean. If you're using this as a global underlay, it won't matter. If you want to clean it up, you can always turn on the trapunto. You can turn on or off the trace border. I usually, if I'm going to use trapunto, I turn on trace border just because. And you'll get a nice clean, global underlay that you can use to also sew down first on towels or minky blankets so that you can put designs on top and the fur won't eat it. So to help you manage the texture there. All right, so that's by working just with the density. Well, what if you want this to be like an ocean wave, similar to that turtle that was on the front page? Well, let's turn off the underlay and let's go into the stitch direction and delete the straight stitch direction for the moment. If I hold down the stitch direction tool and pull across, you'll see an insert curved. So now I can left click, right click, and I can draw a curved stitch direction line, and my stitches curve around. Well, you can decrease, you can go into here, decrease your density, increase it. It's a neat effect that you can use to almost get that water look, and that's similar to what you see on the front of this guy. So that curved, you can quickly do that little effect. Okay. Let's look at decorative fills. They're fun. So once you create a fill area, so remember I created this just as creating a fill circle. So let me put it back to a normal fill. I'll put the density back to a normal number. I'm going to delete this one and just put a straight stitch direction again. So now we have just a basic fill again. Well, I can take this and for my stitch type, change it to decorative. And from there, I now have decorative patterns that I can choose from. There's a whole bunch that come with the software that you can play with. And let's see, there's the spin's kind of fun. So again, even with these, you can play with a stitch direction. So again, I'm going to delete that one and put a curved stitch direction. I guess I should have left the first one I drew, but that's all right. So I can do a curved stitch direction, and I don't like how that looks, so let's do it again. I'm going to delete that one. Let's just do a really basic curve. There. And you'll see it'll wrap that design around there. Okay, so that's using a stitch type changing it to a decorative fill. You see that? So it's decorative. I set the pattern. You can also create your own patterns. So I created this horse pattern, and you can use your own. Here's an EKG, which is upside down. That's another one I created. Here, let's flip it around. There, that looks better. Alright, so you can do lots of decoratives. Now, you can also, back to a normal fill, down here you have presets. If you click on the box with the 3 dots, that'll show you different presets that you have at your disposal. And what you'll see is you have a bunch of different options along here that you can choose from to apply patterns along here. Or you can have a lot of fun and go to pattern fills here and apply some of these neat things. Best thing I can say, whenever you use these patterns fills, the very first thing you should do is come up top and change it to satin. It looks so much nicer when they sew because it reduces all those extra stitches along there and makes them more look like a satin, you know, a really intricate satin fill rather than a true fill pattern. Now when you're working with these, I'll show you a little trick. This shape is what defines that pattern. Well, if I click on the shape, of course it's being ornery at the moment. Oh, I already had it selected. There we go. So if I select the shape, notice my property box changed. All right, and over here you've got this option for blur outline. I don't know if you've ever sewn these. Every now and then you'll see where the needle penetration's all on a line here. Sometimes you see the fabric underneath. Well, you can come over here and blur the outline somewhat, and I'll over exaggerate it significantly, so you wouldn't want to go that much. But what that's doing is it's staggering the stitches along that needle penetration line so that you can cover up the fabric underneath. So by doing, you know, a point or two to obfuscate that line, you won't see the fabric anymore under there. So that's just a technique you can use. The other thing, you can move these handles around, and I'm breaking this design good by doing it, but you can move these handles around to get a different look to that same fill area. If you want to change the shape, you can add points and actually change the shape. So you've got a lot of flexibility when you're working with these patterns. All right, so let's go back into properties and turn that off. None. Okay, so what else do we have over there? So I showed you this. Oh, I didn't show you the fill islands or any of those. Let's go look at that. All right, I'm going to delete this and put in a straight stitch direction. All right, so here it normally looks like that. It's a hole. So let's do that one first. If I want to insert a hole and I want it to be a perfect circle in here, to be like a chameleon eyeball, well, I would select my insert hole. You always select this after your fill. Whatever you want to edit is selected first. So I choose the circle. I then select the hole, input method, well, insert hole, and then I click on the automatic circle. So now again, I can click 2 points, hold the shift key, and click, and now I have a hole. All right, so that added a hole. But if I click this down and hold, you'll see I've got 2 other options. Well, let's look at fill island. So fill island, again, I'm going to select fill island in the circle input mode. Again, I can click and hold the shift key, and my properties are weird, so I would fix this before I went any further, but you can see it added a fill area on top of this one. All right, so I don't like it. I'm going to delete it. Let's see, another thing you can do is hold this down and use this insert split line. So the split line allows you to draw whatever detail you want, and it will put a line along there. And to give you an example, that hand that I did earlier, right here. So this is just a fill, and it's actually, if I pull that apart, you see that's where I did it. So I actually started here using this insert split line and just drew a hand, and I made the dots connect so it looked like a solid hand. Okay. So you can add a line like that, and it'll add kind of like an embossed look to your fill. What else do we have? So let's look at these shapes here. So for the shapes, From a new file, right here you'll see is a select automatic custom shape input. If you click on that, you'll see, just dig through the menus and you'll find all kinds of things. Okay, so you can find designs, you can find, all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to go into custom designs, closed shapes. Let's do common designs. No, where are they? There's a lot of them in here. There we go, custom shapes. Let's say we want the heart. So I can click and drag it onto the screen, and if I zoom in on it, you'll see I have a heart. It's a fill heart, so it went in as a complex fill. I can do that with my Christmas tree. So you've got lots of shapes to choose from in here. Oh, I got a crown. Let's see what the crown does. All right, so you've got a lot of things that you can edit and play with. All right, so there's also in here, just so you can, they're here. They work really well. This common symbols under the custom designs, these stars are fantastic. They sew out really nice. So there's different size stars too that you can drag and play with. Add those to your designs and see how they go. Okay? Alright, so let's see. We went over that. Oh, blends. So blends are a little bit different. I'm just going to zoom in on this one and we'll study its properties. So when you're creating this, there's a video and a blog article that you can read on blends that kind of talk about the philosophy behind it. But what this one is, it's two fill areas stacked on top of one another. The first one is just a basic fill. It's that orange goldish color. And if you look at it, it's just a fill with a straight stitch direction back and forth, a pretty normal density, and it's got underlay and other things. And that's all there is to that one. Well, then on top of it, there's another fill. And if you look at the effects tab, you have this custom density. So this custom density, when you set to linear, that's what you see right here. Well, if you want to play with it, what I would suggest is turning on this auto density. And now you can add points along here, and you can drag along, and when you have auto apply on, you can see how it's affecting your blend. Okay, you can add left clicks to that line, you can add right clicks to the line, and move it around until you get the look that you're going for. The sunset, whatever you're trying to achieve. You can play with it until you're happy. Okay. So, and that will give you a density. So if you look at it again, so I was just playing with the linear, but what that's really doing is changing your density from a min density of 7, so the tightest it gets is 7, to a really open of 30. Okay, and the curve here is how it's varying it along the shape. Okay, so to create your own custom pattern, what you would do is, I'll just start a new file. You would start with whatever shape you want and you just draw it. I've got a whole nother video that does this with a Christmas tree. Yeah, this is ugly. Yeah, let's say that's my shape. The thing I have to make sure of though is that my start and stop are on the same line. You can use this with a grid, you can use the vector like I'm doing right now to draw a line. That's just a vector line, and all I'm using that for is to make sure I move this point so it's on the same line. Alright, so once you have that, you can select the shape. I can right click on it, go to Save Custom Shape, and I'm going to call this Test. I'm going to make it a, let's start with Decorative, we can do Custom Shape, and then under here, we can put it under Patterns. Okay, so it's Test, which is going under Patterns. So if I do a new file, create a fill, I'm just going to do a square this time, click and drag, go in here, go to Decorative, and go to Test. Oh, that's the old test, so it didn't, I already had one. No good. Yeah, so it didn't overwrite it because I already had one. But you can find your patterns there. So there's the EKG one I did, the horse one that I've already saved once. You can, oh, under fill, I put it under pattern. I'm sorry. There it is. It's right at the top. I didn't save it as a decorative, I saved it as a fill. There it is. Okay, and if I turn that on to 3D, you can see stitch direction is not working, but you get the idea. So you can create your own patterns and it will create them in here. All right, I think that is all of them. It's not inclusive by any means, but it's a few ideas for you to think about. I hope that's helpful.